Hi, selamat pagi. Good morning to our friends and colleagues in the Netherlands, and selamat siang to our friends and colleagues in Indonesia. Welcome to the opening session of the track on rule of law during the winter 2024. And I am very excited to take you through this very first session on the social impact of probation services. My name is William Sanchez, and I am the project leader of a tailor-made training sponsored by NUFIC and the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And in this case, I am also the project leader of Saxion University of Applied Sciences, and I'm happy to be the moderator of today's session. Hopefully, you will be enjoying a quick tour of storytelling about the social impact of probation services. We have three great speakers to tell you of their experiences on collaboration and what kind of impact we have. And all of them have been working on this subject for the last 5 years. And to give you a great overview, all of us are not just committed to the rule of law, but all of us also have a certain connection to Indonesia. So that means that there's not just only a motivation on the subject matter, but there's also a personal connection to Indonesia. And that is also about international collaboration, not just about working together, but also sharing stories, personal motivations, and the things you find important. Just a few reminders about today's session. We'll be here with you with three speakers for the next 50 minutes. There is a chat where you can use to place comments, post your questions, and in between the speakers, we'll have a few minutes to answer the questions you have. If in the case that there are any questions not answered during the session, we'll be also able to send you an email or write up during the report the answers to your questions. So please make use of the chat and make sure that you have all your ideas and comments put in there. Anything goes. All questions are okay. So to give us a good start, I will pass over this presentation to Pak Achil from the Ministry of Law and Human Affairs, working at the Probation Services. So without much ado, I invite Pak Achil to start his presentation and his story.
Thank you so much, William, for moderating this panel. Hello, everyone. My name is Nasiruddin. Some people call me with the nickname Acil, including William. Thanks, William. And then as William told to everyone, that I work as a probation officer and also as a deputy of the Secretary General of Indonesian Probation Officer Association. On this opportunity, I will deliver a presentation about how probation officer role in Indonesia criminal justice reform, including one of the best interesting and the good news for probation officers in Indonesia, that in the new correctional law, probation officer in Indonesia have very strategic role. Okay, could you please display my slide? Okay, go to next slide. Okay, so at the starting of my presentation, I want to show what is the problem in Indonesia that caused Indonesia have to implement the alternative sanction. According to the World Population Review in 2024, Indonesia was in the 7th place, the biggest number of the total prisoner. It consists around 270,000 prisoner in the prison all over Indonesia in the 34 province. Actually, now we have 4 new provinces. So, okay. Okay, next slide. So it's the biggest problem in Indonesia. Overcrowding brings so many problems, and as the for the detail, this is the number of the prisoner, 273,000 prisoner, compared to the capacity of correctional facilities. It's only 140,000, around 140,000. So our prison in condition of overcrowded, total overload is about 130,000. It's almost multiply. It's almost multiply by the capacity. So the first province which have the highest number of the prisoner is in Sumatra, North Sumatra. The number of inhabitants is around 32,000, and the capacities is only 14,000. So it's overload around 125%. Okay, so the problem was the overcrowding. Go to the next slide, please. Handling, next slide, please. Okay, so one of the alternative solution for handling the problem of overcrowded is by using the alternative sanction. Of course, the easiest problem, the first problem solution is Indonesia have to build more prison to prepare more space for the prisoner. But we think that if we have to build more prison, and then we have to prepare more money, and we don't know the our needed maybe is very huge number. So the realistic solution is to uh, to use the alternative sanction. So one of the opportunity of the probation officer in Indonesia have been implemented in three justice criminal law system. The first is transformation of juvenile justice system, which implement already around 10 years ago. And then the second is transformation of the correctional law. And the third is transformation of criminal code. Okay, go to next slide, please. Say I want to deliver the first part of my presentation, the role of probation officer in legal reform according to the juvenile justice system. Next slide, please. So in Indonesia, previously, juvenile justice system are using criminal code year of 1917 or Wet Book van Strafrecht, which is we get from the Netherlands and on the colonial era. And after more than 80 years, finally Indonesia have own juvenile court law system. So this is the previous Indonesia juvenile justice system. And on 2012, Indonesia have new juvenile criminal justice law, but both in former previous juvenile justice system and the new criminal justice system, probation officer in Indonesia have a strategic role to give the recommendation and also to implement the alternative sanction. The difference is in the new juvenile criminal justice system, Indonesia also implements the restorative justice approach to use the penal mediation as one of the alternative dispute resolution. Next slide, please. So this is the picture, the schema of the role of probation officer in the juvenile justice system. Probation officers have so many strategic role for preparing the litmus. Litmus is a social correctional research or social inquiry report to give the recommendation for the police officer and also prosecutor and judge to implement the alternative sanction, including the penal mediation. So based on this role, Indonesia have a good news. Next slide, please. The good news, after the new juvenile justice system for the juvenile prisoner, there are number decrease of the prisoner of the juvenile prisoner. According to this graphic, according to the data starting from 2012 until 2014, the number of the juvenile justice prisoner is around 3,000, and the non-prison is only 2,000. But after 5 years implementation of the juvenile justice system, there are a change. The number of the prison decision is decreased, totally decreased to from the about 4,000 to only 2,000, and the number of the decision on non-prison, including alternative sanction, supervision, and also community service for juvenile perpetrator, is increasing to 3,000. Okay, next slide, please. And as the big picture, we can show the difference. We can see the difference according this line graphic. If we look at the year of 2012, the percentage of the prison imprisonment is 72%, and the non-prison is only 28%. And after about 10 years implementation, the number decreased very significantly. So the number of imprisonments is only 34%. It's decreased almost 50%. And the number of implementation of the alternative sanction is increased very significantly from 28% to 66%. So if this condition give the some projection, if Indonesia implements the same way to the same way role, the same way to the adult process criminal justice law, we have we imagine that we can also solve the solution. We get the solution of the problem of the overcrowding. Okay, next slide, please. And this is only the picture on how we implement the alternative sanction for the juveniles. The first picture is some juvenile doing community service in the praying house, and in the second picture, the juvenile perpetrator accept the alternate sanction by doing community service on some government office. She doing activity like writing book register or preparing for some letter. And the third picture is about giving the training for fruit farming for our client who get the alternative sanction. Okay, go to the next slide, please. So what make we are optimist with the new Indonesia probation officer role in the criminal justice, because currently we have a new criminal law and also the new correctional law. So I will present the role of the probation officer in the new correctional law. Next slide, please. So in the new our correctional law, for the first reglement are coming from Netherlands also, and in 1995 we have in Indonesia correctional law, but it's still not give so many significant role for the probation officer. And then in the year of 2022, we are in Indonesia have the new correctional law number of 22 a year of 2022. So the new significant strategic role of the probation officer is in the new criminal law is probation officer playing role on pre-adjudication, adjudication, and post-adjudication to improve reintegration, and also giving the implements the alternative sanction and community empowerment. So it is the 4 points, the main points in the new criminal in the new correctional system law. Next slide, please. At a simple ways, I deliver the information is what we have done in juvenile justice system by the new correctional law. We have the same role as in the juvenile justice system. So we have the opportunity to playing the same role as the probation officer role in the juvenile justice system, including giving the recommendation for the judge and also for the law enforcement officer, and giving the supervision and implementing the alternative sanction by giving the community service. So please to the next slide. And the second part is in the new correctional law, Indonesia have an opportunity to get more community empowerment, like professional, local chief of village, and also private sector to help the correctional facilities to giving the facilities, and also to prepare some kind of a place for doing the community service. Okay, this is the image, the picture of on how we are empower the community, including school, university, professional, local government to help correctional facility giving the service like counseling, education, and etc. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the picture of the implementation of the society community empowerment, including prepare for some training for the perpetrator, for our client who get the alternative sanction or the community service. Next slide, please. And the last part of my presentation is role of probation officer in the new criminal code. Next slide. Yes, we have new criminal code after more than 200 years. And the main point of the opportunity for the probation officer is by implementing sentencing guide and alternative sanction. So next slide, please. Probation officer have a role at least for giving the advisory report or litmus for law enforcement officer. Uh, uh, since this new criminal code giving the opportunity for the probation officer to play the same role as role in the juvenile justice system, and also probation officer will giving the supervision sentence and the community service. And in this new criminal code, the probation officer also have a role to give the recommendation for the president of the Republic of Indonesia for giving the changing of the death penalties. Okay, next slide, please. I think it's the last slide, please. Next. So my conclusion in this presentation, the first is alternative sanction has been widely implemented for the juvenile justice system. And after the implementation in juvenile justice system, it can decrease much number of the prisoner as the data of the juvenile perpetrator have been decreased. And if we are in Indonesia implement this for the adults, we have the opportunity. If it can, if it's implement, it can also decrease the number of the adult prisoner. So next, yes. So the advice is we want to implement alternative sanction that we have done implement for the juvenile, for the adults, and making a cooperation with the Netherlands, reclassing Netherlands is a good way because Netherlands reclassing have experience more than 200 years. Okay, thank you very much. I give back. I give to William. Back to William.
Thank you very much, Chil, for your very concise presentation of actually more than 6 years of change within the criminal justice system. I mean, starting from 1917 to now, it's been a long time, but we see that there's a big acceleration in the modernization of the law system. And of course, having the probation service and the probation officers as a very important role and part of the system. Things have been changing much for you and your colleagues. So and I've been happy to be part of that journey. And as I think that some of our audience is not technically aware of how things are going in Indonesia, I would like to ask you two questions, if I may. So just to summarize, from my knowledge, is that of course the overcrowding of the jail in Indonesia has come from the law system, where we have a minimum number of years for imprisonment for adults. And one of the things which has been changed or is changing by law and by practice now is the what we call alternative sanctions. And you gave us some very nice examples of how that's changing. The overcrowding is going down. And you also showed us that there are different programs which are in place or are being improved to make sure that the transition to society of people in imprisonment are well facilitated, at the least. And as there's return to society is a big important part of this alternative sanction. Can you explain how the community is being involved in this change, like in the Agabri Pipaya? I always have trouble with saying that name. How are they involved in designing this community service? Could you give us a short note on that?
Okay, thank you, for the question. So in the new correctional law, we have a specific parts that give the regulation, give the rule how to involve the community in not only for alternative sanction, of course, for all of the activity of the correctional in Indonesia. So what we have done in at least for about 3 years until now, many member of the community like teachers, student, and also private sector are involved for reintegration program. Let's say for giving the training and also facilitating to get job. But for the community service in Indonesia, in some part of Indonesia, let's say in the South Kalimantan, we have a cooperation. Probation office in Banjarmasin have a cooperation with the local government to try to implement the community service by involving the perpetrator for cleaning the street after the flood, and it works. We are also that because alternative sanction for the adults in Indonesia is not already implemented. So our experience is by using some kind of simulation by giving the assimilation for the prisoner to doing social service or community service by cleaning the street. And at the other for the other examples involving community in the correctional service is also like you are see in my presentation. So the head of uh, some religious organization, let's say, are giving make a cooperation with Bapas in Indonesia to place perpetrator who accept the authorization doing the community service in the prayer house by cleaning the prayer house. And the other example, I think, for involving community, also for the drug perpetrator, um, they involve the community involved to also prepare the rehabilitation facilities. I think that's my answer, William. You still in mute?
Sorry, apologies. Thank you very much for your explanation, Achil. And I've noticed that the committee is really involved in the design of the community service. And one of the things we have been talking about in the last few years is also let's say, as a society, to learn more how to accept and integrate the people back into society. And there's much to be learned about that, because there is a sort of a stigma in society on prisoners, and yet we also
Yeah.
know that everybody deserves a second, third, or fourth chance in society.
And
Could
I'm
you
sorry,
tell
I
me?
also okay, and also I think I forget some very important things. Sorry, before the next question, I think that's why we have a specific program. It's called Pokmas and Gria Abipraya. Okay, the
Yes.
program that's already in my slide, of course, but the explanation is same with my previous explanation.
Yes, so that's also where I was leading to with my question. So, and is there already a notice in the change from the community as to their perception of those who are coming back to society? Are they being more accepted through the community service now? Can you say something about
Yeah.
that?
Based on our implementation of the Gria Abipraya program, after we are involving so many part of the society or community, we get the number of the empowerment of the client is increased. So according to the data in last 3 years, there are significant increase of number of empowerment of the client, including so many clients are accept to get the job, and also the number of participation of the local government and also the community, like uh, religious organization, are increased. And we are also now try to manage it get better by creating some using information technology to record all of the activity of empowerment of the community. And I think I told that community society it works. So it works because in many meeting or coordination meeting between correctional or director general of correction and the local government, and also invite civil society organization. They also very interested to involve to make a cooperation with the correctional facilities.
So thank you very much, Achil, for your answers and insight into how society reacts to these changes in the criminal system. As you said, the law was based on the Dutch practice many, many, many years ago. We'll be talking to Linda now, and to get her view from the Dutch.
Yeah,
Linda,
that's correct. Thank you.
you've been part of this story already for so many years. So I'll give you the floor to you to explain from the Dutch perspective how all this is coming about, and especially the role of probation from the Dutch, and how we cooperate and how we, well, let's say, learn from each other during this journey. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, William. Also, thank you, Paachil, for your clear um, uh, words. To all the participants, also welcome. My name is Linda Bizot. I'm a team leader of ZSM at the Dutch Probation Service. And ZSM is a cooperation between stakeholders in the judicial system in the Netherlands. And it's a fast as possible out of court settlement in small criminal cases. Before I was moving into a leadership role, I was also for many years a probation officer. And then 5 years ago, at that time, Minister Laoli visited the Netherlands, and he was visiting some prisons also. And he thought, well, how is it possible? Are the prisons in the Netherlands empty? And there was a problem in Indonesia about the overcrowding. And so that was the start of a cooperation now for 5 years between probation organizations. And of course, with the help, and that's very important to say, from CILC. And Emily will explain some more about CILC later on. But there were some differences between, of course, Indonesia and the Netherlands. But the beautiful thing was there is also a probation organization. And and Paachil mentioned it already, because of een old wetboek van strafrecht from 2019, many years ago, 1919, I'm sorry. And but it was already mentioned over there, and that was the start of a beautiful cooperation. And together we made plans. We visited Indonesia, and we had a very good cooperation together, and it was built on trust. It was over the 5 years, we had in general the same people, and we were very open. So the first time we went to Indonesia, we met a lot of people. We still see them now, but also the doors went open, for example, to the prisons. So as a Dutch probation officer, I'm used to the Dutch prisons. And if you are in a Dutch prison, well, you see nobody because we have one person in one cell. So that's also the trust of a cooperation. You show each other what you have in the house. So when we were in Indonesia, I saw a lot of overcrowding. I never saw it before. The cell capacity with too many people in it. I only saw it on pictures. But when the group from Indonesia was in the Netherlands, they say, where are the detainees? So the differences, there are also cultural differences. And in this 5 years, it's you learn from each other. I would say, in a cooperation like this, you be more rich in your heart and in your head. So that's what I first wanted to say, because it is about kind of long distance friends, because you have the same goal. You are for Paatje and also for me, we are probation officers. And probation is always the balance between punishment and care. Care about people who are in prison, people who are on parole in supervision at the probation service. So we saw the problem of the overcrowding. And in the Netherlands, we don't have that overcrowding because we have alternatives on sanctions. And one of them is the alternative sanction, the community service. And well, that was quite difficult in the discussions because in Indonesia there are minimum sentences, and in the Netherlands we have maximum sentences. So, but the main goal we in and the same was it's not possible to build more prisons, and prison is not the only solution. But what are the other solutions? So, um, last years we talked about well, like a transformation, about a community service, and also what are the benefits of probations. And there's a lot of research about probation and the role of probation in society. And uh, so about the community service, the new correctional law, it's already mentioned, is also about community service. And in the Netherlands, we have a lot of experience with the community service. And it's grown over the years and also a lot of research. And one of the most important things is, well, of course, we are Dutch, so it must be always cheaper. A community service is cheaper, and but also there's less recidivism. So offenders are not commit a new crime anymore after a community service. And how does it come? Because the people who committed a crime are staying in their own community, in their own society. And yes, they have done something what is wrong and they had to be punished, but we believe as probation officers, not in prison, because there are other solutions. And I am talking about smaller crimes, not about murder, not about rape, not about terrorism. So the smaller crimes. And if there's another solution, you can use it. And we use it in the Netherlands. It's called community service. And I'm very glad that Indonesia has adopted also the community service because it's paying back to society. You did a crime and you're going to paying back to the society. Um, Also, you're not going to prison, so there's a reduce of the overcrowding in prisons. There is a change in behavior of the offender because in the family they know he did something wrong, not going to prison, but they can correct each other. But not only the the their own society or their own family, but also the probation, because the probation has supervision. So to talk about what has happened, how can the client, together with probation, prevent a new crime? That's one of the most important things because we all want to live in a safer and I would say crime-free society. I don't think that's possible, but a safer society is possible, and it can be done together with the probation because probation officers, they know their clients, they know their behavior, they know what they've done, but they can also say, okay, what is your behavior? There are some tips and tricks. And in the community service, you can learn it because you had to pay, you had to work, and you don't get paid for it. You had to pay back to society. And for example, well, already mentioned also, cleaning mosque, but also to clean the greenery in cities. There's a lot of plastic pollution. Uh, with the plastic, you can make new articles. But first, you had to pick up all the plastic from streets, from rivers, from canals. And there is, in local government, not enough money to also to clean it. So in the Netherlands, we said, okay, we have an organization, it's the Probation Service. We have people who committed a crime, they get punished, and we don't put them in prison, but we say we need extra help for society. We literally say you get free hands, don't sit in a prison cell on your hands, but be out of prison and go to work. Go to work for the society. You had uh, damage to the society. So, in the last 50 years, we have already in the Netherlands a lot of projects. We clean, we also mosques, but also churches. We have more churches than mosques. We clean green areas. We pick up plastic. We work also in homes for elderly people. We have connections with local government. For example, if it snows in winter, we clean parking places. And we, I mean, um, our clients together with probation. And so the I was in July last. I was in July in Jakarta, together with a team of probation workers, and we talked about community service and how to implement and what they had done. And I was very surprised, and it was really a nice day. They had some real clients who were on supervision of the probation. They contacted local government, and we had an area that must be cleaned. And we worked there, and the local government, they said to me, wow, is this really going to happen in Indonesia? The community service. I said, yes. At the 1st of January 2026, the community service is possible for Indonesia. And he said, I get extra hands for cleaning the green area, and I don't have to pay. I said, yes, that's correct. And there are rules about how to do it, how to control it. That's very important. But then he said, okay, let's start. This is really great. So the area where our community is responsible for it, we can clean it, we can build together. And the people who are doing it are staying in their own society. I said, yes, that's in a nutshell the solution. And he said, okay, let's start. I want to start this today. So that was very nice, because also it's cheaper and they're paying back, and so it's very useful. And the people who get the community service are also, well, they know they did something wrong, but they also know they get a chance. Sometimes they get a second chance, but there is less recidivism, so people can stay in their own community, and that's the most important. So I think this is a great opportunity for Indonesia. And in 2026, there's also, I want to mention it, the World Probation Congress, and they can show already over there how they make the first steps, because it's for the whole southeast of Asia a very big and important step, because it's also a cooperation between probation, local government, but also public prosecutor, the court. And I think I believe it's gonna be also a success in Indonesia because of the people. The people, I think, they it fits to Indonesia, this kind of sentence. So thank you very much. I hope I was clear about this story.
Thank you very much, Linda. It's always a pleasure to hear your stories, your personal insights as to how things work. And I do really love how you touched upon trust, because trust is a very important key to working in society. And the idea of paying back to society, giving back to society in terms of community service is a wonderful way of showing that trust can be earned. And I would like to ask you also a personal question because, like I said, trust is also has a personal side to it. It's about collaboration, working together, and one of the challenges we still face in this work is working between the Netherlands and Indonesia. I mean, we have a
Yeah.
colonial connection in the past. Relations are improving. We have MOUs in place. We have working agreements and projects in place. But a personal question to you and to you, and I know you represent a large team of people already working in Indonesia and are eager to work together with ACIL and the Probation Service. Um, what is the key to your personal key to gaining trust in this cooperation? I mean, we have the projects, we have the laws, but what makes it work together? What does make sure that things go smoothly in the day-to-day practice?
That you dare to ask all the questions you don't dare to ask. You understand? Sometimes I've got a question, and then I think, oh, maybe it's too Dutch, or I don't want to be uh, a colonial question from 100 years ago, but I'm curious about it. We had discussions about death penalty, for example. We don't have death penalty anymore in the Netherlands, but it was in our rule of law also, but we skipped it. But then they said to me, "Well, it's your rule of law. It's your wetboek." And I said, "Oh yes, it's Dutch." So, but also the questions I never had before as a probation officer, and that's why it is so important, this cooperation and how you can learn from each other. For example, I got the question: is there a difference in the community service between rich people and poor people? I never thought about it before in the Netherlands because we have strict rules. I don't, it's not, it's not in my head, that question, because the difference between rich and poor is not as big as in Indonesia. So, and it's good to think about it and to have to together have discussions about it, and what is the difference and how can it be. Is it important, for example, in the community service? And yes, it is, because of a problem of bribery. Does it happen? Yes, it does happen. Does it happen in the Netherlands? Yes, also, but on a small scale. But you had to be open with your answers. I cannot say to Paachil, no, we don't have that problems. Everything is perfect. 100% of our clients are doing their community service. Well, that's not true. We all make mistakes, but we try to do our best with our work. But still, I think 58% of the community service without a problem, and maybe around 10% really have a struggle to finish their community service, and about it between 5 and 10% they won't do it at all. They said, I want to go to prison, or they have a lot of problems and they cannot do it. So it's you had to be open about it. Yes, there are also mistakes, and our prisons are not empty, but show them that they are not empty. How can we do it? And yes, community service is cheaper. For example, one person in prison is about 270 euros, and a probation and a community service is 16 euros. So we explained and explained and explained, and that it also can be working for Indonesia, but also we want the same things, and that's less recidivism. Nobody is born as, well, you are the criminal. We all have problems in our life, and sometimes you choose the wrong side, but you can always come back. And that's so important about the probation. And then we said at a certain moment, and I saw it in your post on LinkedIn, less prison, more probation. I believe in it.
Great, Linda. Thank you very much for this great insight to a powerful instrument you're using, Dare to Ask. I mean, by being daring to ask, it shows that you have trust in the person who will answer. And like you said, if somebody dares to give you the question, are there any difference between rich and poor? Is there trust in recidivism? Uh, that means that we are already on the way to equal ground. And thank you very much for sharing also this to us, because this an element which is, I think, is needed to be put more forward. And as Emily is coming up to screen, I think this is a moment when we should dare to ask to Emily to share with us her insights. Emily is from the Center for International Legal Cooperation. That name itself is really a big challenge. It's a center where things come
Thank you.
together, and it's
Yeah.
also about international legal cooperation. So that says also a lot about the work. So Emily, a big challenge to you to bring us alongside on the complexities of international legal cooperation. The floor is
Yes,
yours.
thank you, William. Thank you. First, I think I would like to touch upon that question of trust that you posed to Linda, and that's equally for Linda as it is for Nasaruddin. Trust is an important element to build. Trust is something that you earn. It comes in small steps, and it leaves with miles at a time. And because we're talking about integral systems that are part of the work that we do, when we, as CILC, it's an organization that was founded in 1985 to support the bilateral judicial relationship between the Netherlands and Indonesia. So the relationship between judicial institutions in Indonesia and the Netherlands. When that relationship was found, and when we started to work on this bilateral relationship, this was one of our main questions. How do we win the trust so that we can cooperate on equal footing? And the answer is quite simple. It's because when we are working in Indonesia with colleagues like Linda, and we're supporting colleagues like Nasaruddin, they are both probation officers. They are both facing challenges in their work. And they can learn from working together and discussing these difficult topics that Linda mentions, like the death penalty, or more obvious challenges, for instance, during COVID-19, changing of the working structure. How do you deal with not being able to see your clients in person anymore? Changing of the working methods, bureaucracy. These are all things that every probation officer faces in the Netherlands as well as in Indonesia. And by bringing together peers, you can have in-depth discussions. And with in-depth discussions, I mean talking about challenges that are faced in the work daily. Now, of course, we should go back to the start a little bit. 5 years ago, as Linda mentioned, when we started this cooperation, there was an idea to implement alternative sanctions in Indonesia to address the issue of overcrowding. And as you can see from Nasaruddin's presentation, the issue of overcrowding is quite a relevant issue still today in Indonesia. So we're assessing at that time what possible antidotes to overcrowding there could be. Now, alternative sanctions is a combination of activities. It's a combination of alternative sanctions. It's community service, it's supervision, it's electronic monitoring. But alternative sanctions in Indonesia is going to mean something else than alternative sanctions in the Netherlands. So we had to start with identifying what alternative sanctions would be in Indonesia. Because in the Netherlands, alternative sanctions have been around now 200 years. Is that right, Linda? You're muted.
The probation exists around 200 years, but alternative sanctions 50 years.
Yeah, so 50 years of facing challenges, overcoming them, integrating them into the judicial cooperation system. And that is a lot of knowledge that is gathered. And the idea of this program, the idea of a lot of programs within CILC, is to try and share that expertise of the Dutch Probation Service and then address the challenges that Indonesia is facing, but not in a copy-paste format. It's really sharing experiences from the Dutch perspective and seeing if that in any way can help address some of the challenges or opportunities that Indonesia is facing today. A fun or interesting example of this, for instance, is the definition or the role of the prosecutor. The role of the prosecutor and the judge and the probation officer in the Netherlands, it's very interlinked. There are three pillars working towards the same goal. They communicate intensively. We have a system of ZSM, so snel mogelijk, where for smaller cases, all these three partners come together and the police and discuss these cases firsthand when a client is or a suspect is apprehended. These ideas of the close cooperation with the probation officer, the police, the prosecutor, the judge, those are ideas that spark interest within Indonesia, because Indonesia, that close cooperation is something that is of an ambition in the future. And so we have to see what works within the Netherlands and what ideas we can take and implement in Indonesia. One of the ideas that we've been working on very recently is the idea of community service. I think Nasaruddin explained it very well in his presentation, the benefits of community service that can have to a society. In the Netherlands, we have the idea that prison sentence is not retribution, it's rehabilitation. And rehabilitation is a different type of sanction than a retributive sanction. So we have to look, like Linda said, what cases can apply to this rehabilitative sentence. It can be widely applied. After 50 years in the Netherlands, it's more widely applied, and community service is given 7 times more than a prison sentence. But this is an ambition for Indonesia. And now we're looking what kind of community service we can organize, who is going to be involved in organizing community service. And that is where the cooperation between the Dutch Probation Service, Reclassering Nederland, the Indonesian Probation Service, Dit Jaar en Pas, can really come together and analyze how can we organize this in the Netherlands to ensure that when the new criminal code, the KUHP of 2023, that goes into effect in January 2026, can be put into effect so that a prosecutor can recommend an alternative sanction, a judge can accept an alternative sanction, and Dit Jaar en Pas can successfully implement an alternative sanction. So that's kind of what we've been working on in the last 5 years, and very intensively, I would say, in the last 2 years since the new criminal code came into life. But I don't want to overstay my welcome and maybe address some questions. I saw a comment come in from the audience. It might be nice to address a comment from the audience. William, in the last 15 minutes.
Yes, so thank you, Emily, for giving us a quick overview of the complexities of collaboration, especially stressing that it's not about the Dutch, it's about the Indonesian society and how we support change.
Yes.
I have one question from the audience, and I'd like to read it out to you, and maybe anybody who is asking. I have a question from Nusa Muhammad, and maybe one of you will be able to answer the question. Hi, my name is Nusa. I want to ask about this. Is there any specific problems about the implementation of social impact of probation of services in Indonesia and Netherlands? Thank you. So it's about social impact of probation services, and what are the main challenges of bringing it into the Indonesian system? Maybe I start from Nasiruddin. What is your daily challenge when implementing or addressing social impact in probation services?
Thank you so much. So the biggest challenge in Indonesia, one of the biggest challenges is about the paradigm, about the stigma. Stigma come from the society. It's a really big problem because still so many people still thinking that that perpetrator have to go to the prison if they have doing crime, and then they have go to the prison. It's one of the biggest. The second is about the coordination between the law enforcement officers and also the facilities of how to doing the alternative sanctions. That's the challenge because for the first challenges about the stigma or the paradigm from the community, I think we can start it to solve it based on our experience in juvenile justice system. At the beginning, there are also negative perspective on maybe some crime offender will use the juvenile for doing crime for the benefit of the bigger crime offender, but we can reduce it. And for the coordination between the law enforcement officer, we have to solve the problem by as soon as possible. We revise our new procedure criminal law, I think. And then for the third challenges is about the facilities, the lack of staff to giving the supervision, because I think the society will give the trust if if the probation officer doing the supervision by good way, like giving the supervision, giving the program, the intervention, show to the community, show to the society, if the perpetrator can go back to the normal life, doing many such good thing like cleaning the mosque and working to give to pay back to the society.
If I may add to that cultural change, it's very difficult, and it's definitely something that happened in the Netherlands as well. There's always going to be pushback from the community if a community service is enough of a punishment for a deed done. And that pushback we've seen in the Netherlands also, of course, when the probation service was started, this was the case, but it's a worldwide phenomenon, and it's definitely a challenge. And it's important to communicate clearly from the probation service, but also from the judiciary, what role probation service plays within the justice chain. But I'm sure Linda has some ideas on this as well.
Yes, and the nice thing about this discussion, what I hear, and that's about cooperation together. I recognize every example you give. So that's the first. But about what is the one of the problems is also the stigma is not only by society, but also you can change it if society knows what is community service.
Affirmative.
Yes, and but also the local government at the ministry, even the new president. Also in the Netherlands, we had elections. There's a new prime minister, and yes, there are. You always had to explain. Well, first of all, probation, and what is the role of the probation in the whole criminal justice chain, but also, and that's maybe for Indonesia one of the biggest problems. You had to also to explain the community service because it's new. You had to inform the public, but also other probation workers, the people who are in prison, but also the clients who get this new kind of sentence. So on different stages, you had to explain and explain. And if we are with our group in Jakarta and we drink coffee or we sit in a taxi, I always try to explain. And then the question, well, what do you think about it? If you may choose prison or community service. And then they say, so we're not in prison, we stay at home, we do work for society. And they said, yes, well, if you explain it like this, I don't think send that man or woman to prison, but give the community service. Let's try it. And that's, I think, the main goal. Just do it. Try, begin, start, and everybody has the same mindset at the 1st of January 2026.
So thank you, Linda. This question on social impact and the challenges, it sounds very simple, but there's actually many, many layers to this question. And we've been trying to answer this from different perspectives. I'd like to pose a question to Emily, because you've been managing this projects the last few years. Gaining trust is important, working together, sharing examples, but actually sometimes money talks. And how do we measure this impact in terms of quantity? How have you been doing that?
Yes, thank you, William. That's a really good question. And something that we pose ourselves frequently, not only while we have such a program, but also at the end. Measuring social impact, but change starts with what we believe and the beneficiary believes the change is that needs to be achieved. Now, when we started this project, Peer-to-Peer for Justice, Sustaining Legal Relations, a project funded by the MFA, the Dutch MFA, we had 5 key partners. We had the Supreme Court, the Ombudsman, the Council for the Judiciary, and the Probation Service. And there were various measures of change that we wanted to achieve. We wanted to achieve more efficiency within the Supreme Court, which we did by establishing a case selection team that focuses not on the facts of the case, but on the legal basis of a case when it reaches the Supreme Court. We measured with the Ombudsman what the satisfaction is of people going to the Ombudsman, if they believe that they have been heard, if they've been treated effectively and efficiently. And with the Probation Service, our main goal was to ensure that the Probation Service becomes part of the judicial chain. And becoming part of the judicial chain requires a mindset change. It requires to increase the visibility of the probation service within Indonesia. And this we have done by explaining the role of the probation service in the Netherlands, really being one of the pillars of the justice chain. And next to that, our focus was on fighting the overcrowding in the prisons. Now, fighting overcrowding in the prisons, it's a gradual process. But again, it starts with a change in mindset. It starts with people understanding and believing that alternative sanctions are an alternative to prison sentences or fines or other sanctions that are available at the moment. Now, there's a plethora of alternative sanctions that are available. Some are more applicable in the cultural sense. We're talking about cultural monitoring, electronic monitoring. We're talking about supervision. We're talking about community service, and measuring the change of have we been successful in achieving these two goals. One, increasing the profile of the Indonesian Probation Service to become a stronger part of the justice chain, and two, to addressing the issue of overcrowding by making people understand that alternative sanctions are for one a sanction and are a good alternative to prison sentence. We believe we have, because over the 5 years, the more we talk with people, the more that they understand the goals of community of alternative sanctions. We don't have to come into a room anymore with judges from the Mahkamah Agung criminal court and say alternative sanctions are important, they are part of the justice system. We come now into a room and they say, we believe alternative sanctions are important, how do we apply them? So we have gone from the theoretical idea to the practical implementation. And I think that change process is already very important to make us aware that we have achieved step one. Of course, saying that showcases that there's a long road ahead, which means that we've now gone from theory into practice. And from practice, we're still in the in-between zone because the new criminal code is not yet into effect. The Dijen Pas still needs to work on how they're going to accept the new responsibilities of community service and supervision, and how they're going to put that into practice. Indonesia is a very large country, so we have worked in Jakarta and Java. We have worked in Bali, but Indonesia is huge. It's incomprehensibly big for a Dutch person. So we have to realize also that this is going to take a process where all those other islands and other cultural backgrounds are going to have to join into this movement towards alternative sanctions. So we see that change. I think Linda, Nasaruddin, you, William, we see that change, but we need to see that change also with the community. And that will be the next step, putting it into practice, showcasing what alternative sanctions can do. And hopefully in the future, when we come back in 50 years and Indonesia has had alternative sanctions for 50 years, they can teach us something. That is the hope. But, and I know we're at the end. Before we wrap up, I would like to showcase a flyer, because if you're watching in the comments and you would like to join this discussion with us in person next week at the Erasmushuis in Jakarta, we are going to be hosting a thematic event on the opportunities and challenges of alternative sanctions in Indonesia. We have high-level speakers coming from the Netherlands, of the Dutch Probation Service, judges, prosecutors, probation staff, and we're going to be looking at what we have done in the past, that measuring of change William was talking about, but also the opportunities of the future, and looking at the future policies that will be implemented. So I kindly ask you to join us in Erasmushuis and meet us in person for that. We would look forward to it. William, thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Emily, and for the invitation to follow up on this very lively discussion. And as your answer sparked just one more question, we are running about into our spare time. Can we spotlight the question of Orisa on measuring social impact. Emily, do you have a few small, quick notes on this? What could we measure more?
How can we measure effectiveness of transform offenders? Well, for who is this question, William? Sorry.
I think it could be answered by you or Nasiruddin. Let's say let's say a small advertisement for our role as an education institute in this cooperation. We have a lecturer at Saxion University of Appliances who does social measurement of impact, and one of the things besides recidivism is measuring the social economic impact of society by what can society save in terms of benefits and money when it comes to addressing community service. But I think Nasiruddin, just another short question to you then. In the personal, how do you personally measure your effectiveness? When are you happy when you go back home after a day's work?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think for the Netherlands side, Linda already answered in her explanation, because the number of the implementation, that's already a huge number of implementation of the alternative sanction in Netherlands. But in Indonesia, of course, for the adult criminal justice system, we still have a small number. Yeah, it's not totally not implemented, because some of the cases are using the alternative sanction, using the 14th article in the previous criminal code. So how to measure the effectiveness, the impact of the social impact? We still have to do so many research, but as an big image of the effectiveness of this probation, we know that at least if we have to give the imprisonment, there will be so many huge number of money have to spend for giving the sanction, giving the punishment for the prisoner. And if we implement the alternative sanction, and we will learn from Netherlands. I think in Netherlands there are a small number of recidivism come from the community service rather than from the imprisonment perpetrator or for the prisoner. So I think in Indonesia it still have we still have to do many research, but from the experience from the implementation in juvenile justice system, we know that the number of the juvenile crime is decreased after 10 years of the implementation of alternative sanction for the juvenile justice.
Okay, thank you, Nasiruddin. So to our guests who are listening in, if you would like to know more about the projects we are doing and how we support the change in society, please go to the seminar which has been posted by Emily. There's many room for people at the Erasmus House in Jakarta, and otherwise, well, you know how to find us. I would like to thank our speakers, Nasiruddin, Linda, Emily, for taking the time. It's been great to hearing you updating us on this society impact of probation services. And I do wish you all together a very, very great seminar in Jakarta. And like seminars are just events for people to talk, but it's also an event to share ideas, meet family, make friends, and let's say work on furthering trust in the work we are doing. So once again, from my part, thank you very much. And thank you to our guests.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, William, for your good work.
Okay, and this is a wrap for today. And I hope you will all be following the next session, which will be starting in, let's say, a few hours from now. Thank you very much, and goodbye to all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.